Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love it. So, thank you.
$200,000 comes out of the existing EDA levy or in addition to.
Jason Hill, that's my hometown.
We have a line
Okay.
item for housing in our EDA budget, so I'm suggesting.
Beautiful, beautiful town. We moved to even more beautiful town. Yeah.
Paradise up
And we'll
here.
share.
No, I know. It's so incredible. You can't. You're like, wow, I can't even believe I'm here. With this scenery everywhere around me.
Not public yet.
Oh, yes, it is.
Lake Superior is pretty special.
Final straws.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to not say?
So I live in Minneapolis.
Okay.
Have the others in contact.
The others are done.
Yeah.
So then it's not.
I got a whole bunch of grandchildren up here today.
You're in shaky territory, but I will respect your wishes.
You never know, it might come back. So my husband.
The personnel committee, not the board.
So it's not he's, his family is from
I was about to
Harvard
say,
area. It's kind of one of these where his grandpa.
But if,
Well,
that
that
may
may
know
be-
You told Mary? Oh, she knows. She knows her.
This is a low stakes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Low stakes thing.
Are you, are they not having fun?
Built her own
I
house.
think that's fine. I'm
Put
gonna
on
talk
the
and
name
listen.
and email.
Yeah, so.
Are they in the room right now? This is a fun game.
You are working hard.
That's what we call it, right?
Well, we have leadership teams and the manufacturing housing guys would like to live up here.
People in the community know.
Hey, Michael.
Great.
Hey, Michael. Good, how are you?
We're just here for the.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
You
but we
navigated
feel lucky that we got a day with this.
Yes,
So,
Yeah, and you navigated the highway and roads.
yeah, a lot going on.
Boy.
Yeah.
We used to have a whole bunch of applications up here when early, when they leaked a lot of gasoline as well, so
Face to face.
we had big digs, removing contaminated soils.
You're right. I mean, I feel like I've known you forever.
You have fun every day.
So is this construction just up on the road right now, is that the state's line?
It's Mintos.
Mintos project, yeah.
There's 3 engineers up there. They named my dog Chief Executive. We walk every morning. But
So, you're gonna talk about your project, Rob's gonna talk
double
about
bins, truck loads out to Schroeder. Landfill down there.
This is what we're
Each
doing.
of the 100
This is
yards.
This is our problem.
And they accidentally went down below the lakes to put some of the
Everybody has this.
aquifers.
So Ella and
Took a bit of water and
That's what
Lake Superior is 60 feet above the
to help
the
us
surface. They went
to say.
Probably don't have the
Eventually.
But you're in engineering, right?
Yeah.
Great. Well, nice to meet you, talk to you.
If you want to be social distance,
You bet, yeah.
James is there, but there's over there. How are you? How are you?
Good, how are you?
Okay. So, people are coming. And when you talk,
You don't have to sit up there, but I think you have to like stand up.
oh, that's worse.
So yeah, we're actually pardon me, but I'm sitting there.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I think we should just have them all. Yeah.
Okay, come on over here, Adam.
Right now?
Yep, and Ella, Elizabeth, and Carl,
We're asking for our
and
presenters.
Rob.
I think, do you want me to be here to run that?
Working out
You have to present from the big table because that's where the camera
Where the mic is.
Do you want your stuff with you, Paul?
Just this.
You got what you need? Okay.
Inspired you to start this?
Yeah.
But I didn't ask the question either.
If you're a mayor and a PDA person.
I won't embarrass anybody, let me put it that way.
To think on your music strategy.
Getting better, getting better. So I'll be fine.
Yeah, so,
Oh, yes.
I'm Rob Peter.
Nice
to meet you, Anna.
Nice to meet you.
So, because
I'm
that's
Paul Rickey. Sorry, with Joe Swanson.
I've heard you there.
Just keep that on through.
Yeah.
And,
I love your Reagan flag. I just, so Annie is just waiting.
you know, it's 90 degrees.
Their hearts are bigger. Oh, really? All in your house?
No, they're ready.
One house at a time. So all you need to do is tell your story. Talk about, you know, what you've done, what's coming next. Yeah, so that's come down over to the and we'll go drive by the other ones. At least one of them.
No, we might not have slides, maybe work in progress, but that's, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm okay to just talk. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry,
Anna, Ella,
Nice to meet you.
and Elizabeth.
Hi.
They're with Ms. Partnership, and they're the ones who are gonna help us find, I'm gonna play it by ear, so funding, gonna go, you know, at least make sure we have the list of our customers. And try to help us see that these 200 states that Anna like at the same time. And the and Sarah, so finding the ones that are the best for each one. You can give us some suggestions around that. And if we get this HRA going, then that kicks open a bunch of more doors. So that's why we're here, so everyone's about 3,000.
I'm good.
All right, oh, it's noon then. I have to stand. Or sit.
Anna, do you want to water?
Actually,
Come out, I'm kind of obnoxious.
there's a,
Go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've always wanted to sit back here. I come to all these meetings and I think, damn, I want to sit
Sit
back
and
here.
really lean back. Yeah,
right? I don't know where the helm is. I'm fine right here.
swing around a little.
It's, I don't think, yeah, we're
Better
not.
take a picture of
Great.
this. Send it
Yeah,
to my
sure.
favorite ex-commissioner.
Thank you.
I'm kidding. I'm not really.
You are not.
I am not kidding. Thank you. That's exactly, it's warm in here.
It is warm in
So
here.
you've learned in your role of all the stuff, sit next to the door is a good thing?
Yeah.
I did this one.
You are.
Yeah, maybe I should actually scoot over one or two. Here, James, why don't you sit
you
toward
like
the
me
center?
to?
Because,
You should probably be in the center. Would you like me to
oh
move?
gosh, yeah, I'm not sure about that, but
Yeah,
okay.
that's probably a good idea. Here, I'll move. I'll keep moving.
No,
We'll
no,
share.
you're fine, Anna. Stay where you are.
Can we crack open windows or doors or something?
Yes.
So we don't be so stuffy and.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you're a good man. Thank you so much, Paul.
Well, I had no idea I'd be talking.
Well,
Everything I do, Mary, is off the hip.
I know, it was all in the email and you kept saying, I don't know why, I don't know why, I don't know.
Nice to start.
Well, I didn't know you were talking about me.
Freaking
It was in the.
keychain. So we were at Lake Elmo Inn.
Funny
Oh,
stuff.
okay, yeah.
So not
And I put everything, all my stuff on.
oriented. It's amazing. I
Off
can
and
look
without the keys. And Carol drove.
Okay.
So it didn't matter,
I didn't put my hair up. I did
like,
not
darn.
know I was going to be in front of it.
but they had it and they were nice about it.
That's great, that's great. Yeah, I'm one of these people, I lose my keys.
There, that helps.
Couldn't find my keys as I'm getting in the car to go. Had to
very
take
good.
my husband's keys.
Do we know if
So
You're on a short leash.
let's find out. Check, check, check. It's working. Great.
we need to use these?
Okay.
Somebody's drawer.
Okay.
And let me, before we actually get rolling, let me make sure the video has started, okay? So hang on just
Okay.
1 second.
I would ask everyone to set your phones on silent. as I remind myself. Wow, we haven't been in a room with people.
Very exotic.
Wow. All right, we're gonna wait for James to come and tell us that the camera's rolling. I'm gonna start this over here.
Well, let's hope I don't need a pen.
I've got
You can
one.
borrow mine if
You can borrow one if you, I've got one for you.
All righty.
Thank
So
you.
I'm not sure, I didn't see April, but we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Or good afternoon, I should say.
Afternoon.
I'm James Yorkie, and I am the sort of new county administrator, and want to welcome you all here this afternoon for a panel discussion on housing in Cook County. In almost every conversation that I have with anyone about any topic in this county, housing always seems to come up very early in the conversation. It's something that I think we all recognize is a critical need in our community. And there's a lot of work, there's a lot of discussion going on right now to figure out how we can address that need. And there are also some really great and interesting projects going on where people have kind of jumped in and started addressing that need on their own, which you're going to learn more about, and really excited to share that information today. But I want to start by just kind of going around the dais and introducing some of our guests today. They're going to be talking about their projects. And this is really, part of it is just to learn about the work that's going on, but also to start having a community conversation about our next steps, because that's really where the rubber hits the road. So I'm going to just ask, starting at the end of the dais, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, well, thank you, James. So my name is Paul Renke. I'm the president of Silver Oak Development, and I'm working with Joe Swanson at Bluefin Bay Resort. He is contemplating 2 mixed-use buildings encompassing 16 units. I also have a benefit of serving as mayor of my community down in Oakdale. So Oakdale's in the Twin Cities, about 28,000 people. And in that role, I get to serve as the president of the HRA, or combined HRA/ERA, just like it's being contemplated here. And it's good. So I'm looking forward to working through and sharing as we can.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
And I'm Elizabeth Glidden. I'm with the Minnesota Housing Partnership, along with my colleague. We'll introduce ourselves a little bit more deeply later, but we work across the state and provide technical assistance to rural communities and Native nations, and we're here working with the EDA on some housing work.
And I'm Ella Mitchell. I'm a community development officer with Minnesota Housing Partnership, and yeah, we'll talk a little bit more in a few minutes.
I'm Mary Somnus, the executive director of the Cook County Grand Marais Economic Development Authority.
I'm Anna Hamilton, and I'm here to represent Hamilton Habitat,
Very good.
Inc.
Good. And I'm Rob Dieter. I'm a community member and independent developer living in Toffee. Glad to share what I'm envisioning and looking at some different ideas on how to support the area.
Very good. Well, thank you all for being here today, and thank you to our folks in the audience for your interest in this topic and for participating in what promises to be a very interesting discussion. So, Mary, I think at this point I will turn it over to you, and we can kind of launch into our panel discussion.
All right, thanks, James. Can you guys see something on the screen now?
I think
We weren't able to
April
do
is
it.
still,
It's not, okay.
yeah.
if someone wave if something pops up there so we know, because these guys have some stuff to put up there if
Yes.
if the technology
we're
comes
working on
together.
it.
Okay. So in September of 2016, we had a big housing summit here in Cook County. It was brought to us by the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency, Minnesota Housing Partnership was here, Greater Minnesota Housing Fund was here, all the non-traditional lenders were here, 60 local residents showed up. It was so exciting. And it was like the 4th month of my job here at the EDA. And at that point, I was just like on fire, man, with everything that happened at this summit. We're going to build houses. It's going to be great. Ew. Well, it's a lot harder than that. We have built houses. Other people have built houses. These people are in the process of trying to build houses or, living spaces. So, the journey continues. I feel like we've made a lot of good progress in 5 years. I think that there's a lot more understanding of the challenges and opportunities around housing. Clearly, the need hasn't diminished at all in our time that we've been working on this. But this is, as James said, the beginning of our next steps. And Ella and Elizabeth are up next on the agenda to talk about the Minnesota Housing Partnership and how they can bring help to our community needs. But before they begin, I want all of you to know that you can raise your hand at any time and ask questions. This isn't a formal, Madam Chair kind of meeting. It's just a conversation. Yep. And there's donuts and water on the back table, and there's agendas and other handouts on the table on my right at the back of the room. So help yourself to all of that stuff. All right, and then Ella and Elizabeth, welcome.
Great, thank you. So Elizabeth and I are really excited to be here, finally up in Cook County. So I had some slides, but I think we can just sort of talk you through it. I want to talk a little bit about who we are at MHP and why we're here, and sort of how we're working with the EDA and other partners in the county to further some county housing solutions. So Minnesota Housing Partnership, we are a over 30-year-old organization, and we work in 3 main areas around housing around the whole state. So we do original research on housing solutions, housing challenges. We do policy work at both the state and the federal level. And then we also do direct work in communities. So that's sort of the capacity we're here in today. We're working through a rural capacity building grant. And so we have actually been working with Mary and James and Mike for about 9 months now. We started the end of last year. The EDA applied for a technical assistance grant, and that brings us in to sort of help walk through some ideas for resources, grants, other tools that can further housing goals here. And so 2 of the main things the main thing that we've been investigating is the development of Housing and Redevelopment Authority. And so we've been talking, as many of you may have heard, of adding HRA powers to the existing EDA. So I'll just talk a little bit about what an HRA is. I think that today we're mostly going to talk about development projects, but just as sort of, I think part of it is that we're hoping that some of these discussions might help inform what this HRA might look like. So an HRA is a Housing and Redevelopment Authority. It's an independent public entity that is established by and accountable to a city or a county government. And they can administer a wide variety of housing and redevelopment programs. It's a very common structure in Minnesota. There's over 200 around the state, so both at the county and city levels. We've been thinking about, one of the main benefits of an HRA is, it does bring some authority, so there are some specific powers, but really it's about bringing housing as a focus in the area and really a central entity that is really just charged with working on housing and then accessing resources through that. So it has more of a long-term focus. I think that Cook County has been able to do a lot with just working with developers one-on-one and as projects come up, but this is really about developing a pipeline of housing solutions far into the future. And also with that, dedicated staff and resources. So some of the common programs that HRAs do, but there's nothing they have to do. They really can look different depending on what the local community decides they want them to do. But many of them administer programs like down payment assistance, housing rehab loans or grants. Some of them own and manage housing, and then they often also administer rental assistance programs. And some of the financing and funding tools that are available to an HRA are things like a levy, which is similar but separate from the existing EDA levy. There's some other financing tools like tax increment financing, interest reduction, bonds, special assessments. And then it's really a good way to apply for state and federal funding sources for housing, like things from Minnesota Deed, small cities, things like that. And we really think of it as like as a complement to some of the local government tools and resources that are available. So, there's a variety of program areas that either local governments and/or HRAs can do. So things like home improvement loans, rental assistance, local housing trust funds are something that have become really popular around the state recently, and we've worked with a lot on. Things like tenant protections. And then some of the local government financial tools that are also a really important complement. So things like local tax abatement, land use and zoning changes, low or no cost city land, and then land cleanup and infrastructure investment are things that local governments can provide to help with housing. So that's just we wanted to sort of set out that those are some of the things that we're here to talk about and provide resources on and answer questions about. But really looking forward to hearing from the developers today and sort of how maybe some of those tools might help with the projects that they are looking into.
So maybe you could speak a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how you said you need a sponsor, either the city or the county. What are some of the nuts and bolts about establishing an HRA?
Yeah, so there are different ways to do it. I think that the way that we've sort of been focusing in on here in Cook County is you can add HRA powers to an existing EDA, and so the EDA here is a joint city and county, Grand Marais, Cook County, and so it sort of seems to make the most sense to add those powers so it would be the same board. There might be some questions there as to how exactly that would work, but
so the EDA board would just absorb that, or is that pushed on us by the county and the city?
There needs to be a public hearing, and then there needs to be a levy request to the county board to provide funding to hire a person to do the work of the HRA. And the city, we're talking about doing this under the joint powers possibly, so the city and the county boards council would approve, the EDA would approve, the three boards take those actions, and then it's established, and then it's recorded with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development.
So it's a three-part.
All three of our organizations will work together to establish the HRA, if we all agree that we want to do it.
Right. The other thing is, coming forward, we're working on a proposal for a year one work plan for a director, HRA director, who would be responsible for achieving certain deliverables within the first year or first 2 years.
Yep, and we're going to talk about that some more after 2 o'clock. If people are able to stay, we're going to have this sort of panel discussion and presentations now, and then more discussion after 2 o'clock with people who are able to stay. So, and one of the handouts on the table is an introduction to HRAs. So there's, to help you remember what Ella talked about there. So be sure to pick that up if you want one. So next on our agenda, we're going to hear from Rob Dieter about the proposed Sawbill Village in Toffee. Rob and I have been working together for quite some time. His development plan, I want to be careful how I say it. His development plan was really, truly the best development plan I've ever seen. It was really thoughtful, really comprehensive. And if his work is as good as his writing, then Sawmill Village is going to be wildly successful.
This is a tough introduction for what's going to follow. This is a tough introduction. Thank you very much, Mary, and just thank you for allowing me to share this with you today. And I wish I could present the slides that I put together, so I'll try to tell the story here along with it. But I think just taking a moment to recognize the journey for me to be here. I am not a developer. This is not my chosen profession. What I am, though, is a strong advocate of Cook County and the North Shore. And my path to get here started about 6 years ago. One of my neighborhood acquaintances and friends, a family friend, Jenny Dulce, lives here in Grand Marais. And in 2015, she and I and her husband, Jeff Kern, we had dinner at the Angry Trout. And I was asking Jenny and Jeff, what was it like to move to Cook County? And what were some of the challenges about that Cook County was facing? And what they shared were two things. One was living wage jobs, opportunities for people to earn a living wage within the county. The second, what they brought to life, was the challenge of housing and the impact that had on mobility. And it was interesting because that conversation resonated with me, and as I drove back to our home in Toffee, I noticed for the first time something that had been there for years, and it was the unkept, unmanaged property that had been essentially bankrupt across from the American Inn and Holiday. And I realized that was something that I could potentially do something with. And I think it wasn't until I had that conversation with Jenny and Jeff where I realized that this is something that might take root. So despite that lot being on there for 17 years, as many of you know, I purchased it in 2018. And for safety and for safety reasons, essentially, I ended up having to take down 2 of the 3 buildings on that lot and clear out a lot of just overgrowth that had taken place for the past 2 decades. But it's a white canvas, and now the question is, what do we do with it? As I was looking at those options, and once it was cleared, I recognized it was a beautiful location, and it overlooks the lake. It's right on the thruway of Highway 61. And one of my friends said, Rob, you're going to make a lot of money. You're going to put up condos and houses, and it's a great time to be building those in the marketplace. But it was too late for that conversation for me, because by that point I had lived here and had spent enough time here with friends and relationships where workforce housing and year-round housing and access for new job growth in the county have become meaningful points for me. So as I have been working with Mary on this vision, it's been something where if we can find the path to do this, my intent is to go after those two key components, hence the multi-use development proposal that I've presented and will continue to share with you this afternoon. If we can't get it done, then I may go back to some entrepreneurship, but I'll be not happy every time I pass it, I'll tell you that. But my vision is a destination where our local community can find jobs, they can live, they can experience and take part of the North Shore. And I think this site is a great opportunity to launch from. So what is Sawmill Village? Sawmill Village is its intent is a multi-use development. It will be 2 stories with a basement. The intended footprint is 6,000 square feet. So across 2 levels, that's 12,000 feet above ground and approximately 6,000 below ground. Now I'm fortunate on the below ground portion for 2 things. Number one is the previous home that was, or the construction that was there, they had already excavated about half of my existing footprint. So I'm encouraged that I won't have to do as much demolition as our friends at One Roof had to do, and I'm grateful for their sharing their information and experience with me. But the intent would be to have retail spaces, 4 retail spaces on the main floor, and 6 two-bedroom apartments on the upper floor. I spent about a year living in a two-bedroom apartment 3 years ago. And it was an interesting experience because it made me better understand how to create this space in a livable, enjoyable manner. And the two things that stood out in my experience were, one, you need storage. So I think it's going to be important to assign a portion of the basement so that each renter could have access to some additional storage. Second component is about having a garage. And if I can do it on the east side of that lot, there's a previous structure there, I would like to build a detached garage that would afford each apartment to have at least one stall of enclosed space. The main floor and the retail commercial space really would be 3 retail spaces and 1 outfitted for a restaurant. Now, if you live in the West End, or you're familiar with the West End, and if you have friends in the West End, if you ask them what's the #1 thing that they're looking for outside of workforce housing, it's a restaurant. They are looking for a place to go and to aggregate and to kind of expand the options that they have within a smaller driving distance. So I've scoped that in as part of the development, and I think that was key because during the due diligence, I was trying to understand truly what does the West End need, and a restaurant and housing were the two things that leapt forward. So why am I doing this? I'm doing it because I think it's investing in a place that I care about and that I'm spending more time and will continue to spend more time into. I think it's aligned with the vision and the direction of the EDA, of the county board and its members. And I also think that it's an opportunity to do something together as a community. And I need that support because candidly without that collaboration, I am concerned about my ability to do it. And I'll share with you what I mean by that quantitatively in just a moment. One last note about why housing in Toffee. And Ella and Elizabeth and Paul and I had a chance this morning to kind of stand on the ground where our proposed developments are. And what's really interesting is when you think about it, from either of these development locations, you can walk to school at K through 8. Post office, there's a bank within walking distance. You're across the street from the gas station. Your groceries and liquor store are just right on the boardwalk on the east side. You've got a park in Toffee Park that has a barbecue and fire pit. You're on the Gitchigami Bike Trail, which will be expanded next year. But today you can walk up to Temperance State Park. You've got Lakeview, Mountain View, and you've got immediate access on Highway 61 to go either east or west. You really can't put together a better package from a convenience standpoint than housing in Toffee. So as I've rolled up project costs, and again, I wish I could share this information with you more clearly. The latest estimate I have is the project cost is totaling at just over $2.8 million. The land and reclaiming the footprint and the demolition was an expense of just under $300,000. The building, utilities, and administrative costs add up to be about $2.3. And there's an additional $200,000 of contingency funds, which I've been assured will be utilized quickly. From a funding standpoint, I currently am looking at putting 25% of funds from an equity standpoint, having 25% of the project in from an equity. And when I looked at funding the balance through a bank loan of $2.1 million, the debt service on a 25-year term at a 4.25% interest rate is about $137,000 a year. Now, that 137 is one of two challenge areas to keeping this project within the affordable price range of the average Cook County resident. And what I did is I took some time to assess, based on the average income, what would be considered an affordable rent. I'm putting up 2-bedroom apartments. So in my mock-up, I base this on 2 adults that were able to earn the average income of Cook County. And if I look to try to keep rent there, then you have other costs which are that you have to factor in, whether the utilities are included or not included. But my goal is to keep this at a fair and reasonable rate so that it's affordable by people who live and work in Cook County. The challenge with that and maintaining a debt service of 75% is that, coupled with the anticipated property tax burden, makes the project unsustainable. My net cash flow, once I back out depreciation, is a negative $81,000 a year. And that does not include any return on equity or any profit that I would have for putting the money up front. So that's straight cash flow. And that's kind of brought me to appreciate the work that I see Pat Campanero out there, Mary Somnus and Howard at the EDA, very interested on the MHP to understand, is because in some trifecta, I need to figure out, is there a combination of resources that I can use to decrease the amount of debt that I'm funding, whether that's through grants or it may have to be through equity, it may have to be through waiting, frankly, until costs and construction and accessibility is different. But as I've looked at options, I think partnering with different sources like IRRB, MHFA, other sources, Administrator Jerky and the county board have opened up a dialogue on a TIF tax abatement discussion. And I would also be interested in are there opportunities for lower interest rate loans than the 4.25% that I'm eligible for today. And it's interesting because as we've gone through this journey, I think we've learned a lot, and the challenge of doing a multi-use development is that there are a lot of resources if you do housing only, or there's a lot of resources if you do business only. But when you try to combine the two, there's fewer entities available to provide support. But that's maybe the overview of the village, and I just want to again say thank you for your allowing me to present that to you today. I am very much in support of parallel projects that you'll hear about today and throughout the county, and I'm excited about what's going on in Cook County. And I also want to just thank again the EDA and the MRA, as well as Administrator Jerky and the board for their willingness to explore options for partnership. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. I just want to let everybody know that I sent out an invitation to about 50 people to watch this on Zoom. And the Zoom isn't working, but the county website is. So if you have any friends, that's what I was doing, emailing to my big group saying, go on the county website and go to the live stream. So if you have any friends that are texting you or emailing you and asking you, like, what's going on? I thought I could watch this meeting. Help me spread the word that it is on the county website, live stream now. Thank you. And thank you, Rob. And we know that Rob is going to slip away. His daughter has a very special birthday dinner this evening, and he needs to get back home to his family. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And if there are any questions, Mary, that I can answer or email or respond, please let me know.
Yeah, we'll do. I'm sure we'll be talking.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. All right, and next then, we're going to hear from Anna Hamilton about Hamilton Habitat, Inc.
Yeah. Well, I am definitely out of my league. I thought I was going to be sitting out there. I had no idea I'd be here. However, I get a little chuckle out of it just because I've always wanted to sit back here. But anyway, so everybody here knows pretty much what I do. I've been in the community 37 years, started up the Gunflint Trail, where housing was easier to come by in those days. People had cabins. I lived in other people's cabins, and life was simple and great, and I wish that was the way it was today. But housing has been an issue since I moved here. It's been discussed since I moved here. It became, my sister and I have had businesses over the past 28 years, and we've been really fortunate. My sister has been able to house some of hers, not in anything luxurious by any means, but, people that are willing to live up on the trail tend to have different needs and are satisfied with less. We're in town. It seems a little different, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, I sold my last restaurant in 2018. I had the time. I did not have the money, but I had the time to finally put my money where my mouth was. I've not reached out extensively for help. I have dealt with Mary on several occasions. I've bent Mike's ear quite a bit, but I've never asked for funds. Martyrdom is not necessarily the point, but I don't like strings attached, and that's just who I am. I just knew there was a need, and the discussions are wearing me out, and so hence Hamilton Habitat. And we had the opportunity, a woman came forward and donated some money to us as soon as I sold the restaurant, and that allowed us to buy a piece of land in town. We focus on town because the people that we are kind of targeting, I guess is a poor word, but are the little people, which we are. So I don't feel like I'm insulting anyone. I'm one of those little people. I've watched this town go from a ghost town, particularly in the winter. I mean, this place used to shut down at the end of September, and there was nothing. And a lot of the merchants in town didn't want anything. It made no sense. However, but whatever, here we are, where there is never a moment where there's not somebody here, which is great. I'm one of those transplants. I have no problem with people being here. I've survived off of these people in the whole time I've been here. So I'm very grateful for tourism. I'm a little concerned right now. I'm going to jump forward because since this COVID, I've never seen people here like I've seen people here. I think it's very clear that everybody wants out of where they are. And again, I don't blame them. I'm fortunate. I'm so fortunate that I'm here already and that I had the chance to be here. So my intentions has been to give back. I am lucky. I've not had very much, so it's not that I am full of money, and that's why I'm able to be here. I've put my time in. I've worked really hard. I think and I've been able to hang on where a lot of people move out of here because they just can't take the 2 and 3 jobs anymore. They can't find housing. It's just, it's frustrating. And it's on all income levels. Well, that's not true. It's not all income levels, but the working person, So anyway, we were able to get a donation, which blew my sister and I away. It happened at SOB, and this woman had overheard us talking, and she pulled us outside, and she said, geez, I'll give you some money. And I said, what? And she said, yeah, why don't you come to my house now? And Sarah and I are like kicking each other, and whatever. She gave us the money with no strings attached, and it still doesn't feel very real, and it's wonderful. And that allowed us to buy a piece of land, so we built a house. I'm the project developer. I, too, am like this fellow over here in the fact that I am not a developer. I only have little knowledge of the construction because I work at a lumber yard. I mean, I switched from food to lumber, and I don't know where I'm going with that, but I do realize how hard it is and what an oxymoron it is to build affordably right now because of that. However, I've learned a few things. we went with a model for single family, not families. You know, I'm not a developer. The people who keep Holiday afloat, our gas stations, our restaurants, if we, particularly with this surge of people, my concern is, number one, we are not able to service these people now. You know, our businesses are closing down 2 days a week, they're whatever. I mean, I don't think you can go anywhere, maybe with the exception of the courthouse, and maybe that's not even true, where people are looking for employees. I don't understand it, and that's a whole nother subject. We aren't even going to be able to really advertise. I don't know how people advertise unless somebody is born and raised here and has a family that they can live with. Where are they going to live? So you finally get some employees, and where the heck are they going to live? My intention is not to necessarily build a house for somebody who just moves here. That's not my intention. My intention is to build a home for somebody who's here and is vested and has worked those 2 and 3 jobs and are just hanging on, and all they want is a friggin' house. And so that's what we did. We built, our first house was 16 by 36. That includes a covered 6-foot porch. It is on a crawl space. It's extremely efficient. We ordered the shell. The shell comes with smart siding, which is a hot thing right now. And it comes with windows, doors, and a metal roof. We don't opt for the windows because they're shed windows, so we get Marvin windows. We have it spray foamed, blah, 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 wired, and so on and so forth until we have a finished product. Everything is new, and it's energy efficient. And the first home that we built, it was kind of first come, first serve. We had a waiting list, as we do now. But because we don't have a lot of money, what we have right now is not even the initial funds that were initially donated, because of our second project, which was a different story. But because we don't have a lot of funds, we needed somebody to get qualified, and we needed somebody in that home. We don't have anything in writing as to, how you qualify for that home. It's a small enough county that word of mouth, and, I know almost everybody, even some of these new people. You can't be making $80,000 a year, We need you to be one of those holiday people and those restaurant employees and a hardworking booger. And your credit has to be decent because you have to qualify for a loan. That's part 2 to what, my goal is. My goal is to, at some point, be able to have enough funds in Hamilton Habitat to be able to sell on contract for deeds, short-term contract for deeds, so people can establish some credit and then go get a mortgage. We want ownership. We don't want to rent. We want people, we think there's pride in ownership, and the chances of people staying are much better than if they rent, in my opinion, in this situation. No, I have nothing wrong with rentals. We hugely need them. That isn't what I'm talking about. So, first people up on the list who qualified first were 2 teachers. Young teachers who were up to their eyeballs in student loans. They were just getting ready to leave. And somebody told them about what we were doing, and it's just a perfect little match. They got a perfect little private lot with it had an outbuilding, it had a small cabin on it, so they have storage and a little workspace. And they don't want to be owned by stuff. And this is a perfect form. And they did fit into our guidelines, So, anyway. We do, however, deed restrict these. We deed restrict these homes. We thought, I thought, over and over and over, how can we keep these affordable? How can we keep these out of the real estate market? And because I choose not to go with the land trust idea. At one time I did approach the EDA, and one of the guys on the EDA is hell-bent on that land trust, and I'm not. And so right away that was not an option. So the only thing that we could come up with was to deed restrict them. They cannot be rented in any capacity, both residentially, which I'm now starting to question, but and vacation rental. even though I appreciate both. They just can't be a part of what we're doing, or I feel like I'm defeating what we're doing. So we sold that house, and we took that money, and we bought another piece of land. Last year, the city said I could get 3 homes on it. My fault, I should have done more homework. I knew the land was wet, everything in the EDA, and that this particular area is wet. We're at the bottom of a hill, so that didn't surprise me. But I also misunderstood wetland credits and what they, I just thought, hey, you can just replace that wetland with wetland credits. Well, that's not true. And I found that out after we paid $72,000 for this piece of property, which was the bulk of our money. And our first home sold for $110,000, just so you know. That was $10,000 more than I wanted it to sell for. But anyway, it sold for $110,000. So we bought this piece of land. After a lot of to-do, we were able to build one house. We were almost not able to do that. They almost didn't let us do that. We almost ate $72,000. Instead, we ate $45,000. And so that somehow made it feel better. And we built this house, and it was bigger than our first one. After the first one, and I've just designed it and designed the space, and it was still a little too small, our first one, because the living room and the kitchen are one, and you just don't want to be eating on the couch, kind of a thing. So we went 4 feet bigger, so it was 16 by 40, which includes the screened-in porch, or not the screened-in porch, the covered porch. And it was amazing what that 4 feet did. Just 4 feet. Mm-hmm. And I rearranged some things, and I love this particular model, and I'm going to do this if I can over and over and over again. Talking to both the first homeowners and the second homeowner, it costs absolutely nothing to heat. It was just, it's such a tight little house, you don't even see a bug. I like that part. Anyway, so we sold that to a cook from my sister's place, who had been working at my sister's place for 15 years. Oddly enough, that kid had been saving his money. He qualified for a loan, and he bought that house. Now we have, and I sold him half of the property. I thought, why not? We can't do anything with the rest of it. We are looking for a place to donate the rest of it, though, maybe the school or something, because we can't do anything with it.
Oh, nice.
So before this, I bought a house in town right after I sold Huey's, and I bought it just because it had a rental unit on it. It was a garage. My sister and I remodeled it, and we do have a rental. It is not part of Hamilton Habitat, because that was prior to all this, and it's part of my home, so, but we don't want to get into rental. So I was just approached in April by a local woman who has a little teeny house that she used to live in, and it's right up the street, not very far, and she said she did not want it to get into the rental pool, and would we be interested in buying it because she likes what we're doing. It was not what we were thinking. I looked at it and wasn't sure. She wanted $75,000 for it. Don't have that really. She was really easy because she likes this, what we're doing. We bought on a contract for deed, so I'm using other people's money for a while is what I'm doing. And then a woman came forward and said, well, how's your projects? And I said, well, they're kind of slow right now because I don't have quite the funds. I got to go to the bank. And she said, how much do you need? And I said, $50,000. She said, how about if I loan you $50,000? And I thought, holy, okay, okay, with no interest. So we were able to purchase it on a contract for deed, take her $50,000. We stripped this house down to its studs. The studs are 90 years old. They're hand milled. They're really cool. The rafters, everything. And we started from the beginning. And we are way past our $50,000, but it doesn't matter because that house is the cutest little thing. I'd live in a heartbeat, and it sold to a 26-year-old girl who works at Java Moose and has worked there for 10 years. And if I could do that one over and over again, I would. That was just so sweet. All you see from this house is the friggin' harbor. So why is that important? It's because the little guy, again, deserves to see the friggin' lake too, you know? Anyway, so I've been working on a piece of land, which I just went to zoning, and it didn't work out. I've been trying to buy a piece of land that will hold 4 homes. It needs to be rezoned from commercial to residential. Long story short, didn't happen. That's still my goal on another piece of land. It would be so much more efficient for the contractors and everybody to go, especially when you're using the same model, to go from this house to that house to this house to that. You know, it doesn't take very much for our contractors to put up 2 walls. You know, they do 2 walls and they're ready to finish it, and they have to wait for everybody else. So anyway, efficiency is what I'm looking for. And since that fell apart, which was just a couple weeks ago, I have approached the city, the EDA, on some land I've tried to buy for 6 years and been let down for 6 years. Just saying.
Yeah, I know.
And I know. There's nothing personal. You know, there's been other interest and intentions with that property, so I certainly understand, but I'm back at it because there's so little available out there that if I don't get my finger on some land right now, then I'm out of the game. What we're doing is done. So I'm hoping by the end of this year, we will have built 3 homes this year, if all goes well. And this last home, which is up the hill, because of the initial cost and starting from the rafters and the studs, we sold it for $159,000. I have a lot of trouble with that because I'm still in the $100,000 range. That's my goal. These homes that we've been building, that we built 2 of, are going to be 1 to 110. That's what they're going to be. This one I think is a little expensive, but the gal can afford it, and it's still relatively inexpensive based on everything else. And it's sweet, and it's new. So what do I want? I've gotten so much local support. I really am shocked that I'm sitting up here because I thought I was coming just to listen. I don't know. I'm not a good public speaker. I've had lots of support. I can't complain about that. You know, everything for us depends on donations. We're 100% donation funded. And that's all I have, and I'm really happy you're here. I can't. Hallelujah. New administrator.
That makes 2 of us.
Yeah, you know. So I don't know what else to say. If anybody has any questions, feel free.
So first of all, Anna, your story is remarkable, and thank you for sharing it. I mean, what you're doing is exactly what this community needs. And the cool thing about it is you know, money's a big obstacle, but then also just space, because I mean, this is scalable. You could build 100 of these if you had the space to do it, right?
You bet.
Easily. And that's what gets me really jazzed about this project, is just it's something that seems like could be fairly easily done at scale to really you know, address this issue. And I love what you're doing to make sure that that these homes are going to be owned by folks who live and work here and who wouldn't be able to afford being here but for the fact that somebody's trying to address this need. So I just think the world of what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And I thank you too, Anna. You and Sarah are great, great members of the community, great contributors. Put down that gavel.
We have nothing else to do. Thank you.
And just to clarify for people who are listening, the land that Anna's talking about that we're going to have a conversation again is along the Gunflint Trail, kind of across from the Law Enforcement Center, where we've been working with developers of potential assisted living projects ever since, again, for 5 years. Since I've been here, we've been working on that project, and that one doesn't pencil out on paper either. So it's my understanding that at some point in time, there was talk at the city about setting aside those lots for multifamily, and so I called Anna and said, let's have this conversation one more time and see if the time is right, and if it isn't, it isn't, you know. We've been here before.
That's right.
But we'll try.
But I won't be again, I'll tell you that.
This will be the last time. Is this the
Just saying.
3 strikes? All right. So, next, Paul is going to talk to us. Paul Reinke is, as he introduced himself, we're working with Joe Swanson, the owner of Bluefin Bay, on a project in Toffee.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mary, and also thank you, Mary and James, for the invitation to come up. Now,
Thank you for being
Anna
here.
just got done blowing everybody away with her ability to tell the story, like James said,
Cool.
and the impact that's being
Louise.
done. So that's really impressive. That's cool.
Thank you.
My world has been around construction, real estate, commercial real estate for over 35 years. I've been able to be involved in general contracting. I've been in corporate real estate world. I've been able to manage the development of apartments, condos, single-family villas. One of the neater projects was something down in Brooklyn Park, which was the adolescent psychiatric hospital that we were able to lease to Prairie Care, and amazing deal. So I've had a ball and learned a ton, and then was introduced to Joe Swanson towards the end of last year, I guess. And as we talked, this project, which we call the Toffee Downtown Mixed Use Development. So if you picture where the Bluefin Bay Resort is, post office, just immediately across 61 would be that acreage where this project would get developed. I should say also that Joe Swanson and I talked last night, and he apologized for not being able to be here. This is of interest to him. It's an important element for Cook County, and he will be involved somehow. Remains to be seen.
He has been, yes, very much.
He will continue to be, is a better way to put it.
Yep.
So this project, you can go, it was given, the presentation that I'm going to allude to was given to the full board of the commissioners earlier this year, so you can go online and look at it. James, maybe there's a link or something that we could do with this, this recording. But it does a nice job on the concept, on how we got from 34 years ago to here, Bluefin Bay's statistics about workforce and how people are attracted to the resort to work. The resort really is made up of the four areas: the Toffee Cove Apartments, the Bluefin Bay Resort itself, the Surfside, and then Temperance. This then is just picturing two buildings on that property just across 61. Each building would have retail on the first level and then apartments upstairs. There's a smaller building to the southwest and a little bit larger building to the other side of the property. The larger building has two additional units planned for ADA accessibility. Otherwise, the top floor is all apartments. And it really is a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. In total, there's 14 units that would be built, really equating to about 26 beds. The rest of it is then first floor retail of about 9,000 square feet in total. Rob did a nice job setting the stage for the reality of money, construction costs, and implications about rent. The preliminary numbers that are estimated for this project also show a gap between the debt service on the cost, just like you buy your home and your the $165,000 or $100,000 home is I don't know, $900 a month, $600 a month, whatever that would be. And 600.
Yeah, between 6 and 650.
Yeah. So it's just that difference between what it costs and the debt on that and what you can get on the rental revenue, and that's the gap. And the gap is the tough part to figure out what do we do, and they're not ostentatious. It's we call it workforce housing. It's community-based workforce housing. And so being able to be involved in this conversation, and by the way, the idea of creating this HRA in conjunction with the existing EDA, phenomenal. To me, and again, I sit on our EDA HRA back in Oakdale, to me, the biggest advantage of it is that it allows a greater number of options to be considered on how to help and how to provide advice and technology or technical assistance. So this is a phenomenal project. The search that's continuing is funding assistance on for Minnesota Housing Finance, the IRRB. There's discussions about tax abatement. So you try to reduce the gap on the construction costs But then the whole other side of the equation is the operating expenses of running these projects. And if it's possible to get a tax abatement considered for the project, that helps reduce that, making the whole numbers game work better. Dennis Risdell, many of you know, I've gotten to know him really just the last 3 months. Joe and I have been working together since probably late last year in December. I'm looking forward to continuing. Our goal would be to have this figured out on a reasonable nature to allow construction to start next year. Somewhere around Memorial Day would be ideal. So, anything else? Any questions? Or somebody can say, wait a minute, bull, that, you can't do that. No. Thank you.
Thank you. So there are other projects going on around the county. Some other folks who couldn't be here today. One Roof has land at both the Nordic Star and the Four Direction dwelling locations, and they're pondering how they might continue to do work on housing in Cook County. The folks at Hedstrom Lumber are in the process of building some workforce housing for their staff. Haven't caught up with them lately, but I think that project continues to move forward. Chris Gildem bought the old Hill Haven. That was like a senior housing, not assisted living, but just a place where they could live. And he has converted that into 6 apartments, I think, and those are all fully occupied. What's his name? Patrick Reeves bought the Temperance Traders down in Schroeder and converted those 4 cabins that were vacation cabins. He converted those to workforce housing. So, you know, people are picking away at this, and little by little we're adding. But I'll remind us again that in 2016, the Cook County Housing Survey said we needed about 200 units of single-family and rental housing. And as far as I know, maybe we've added about 40 in the last 5 years. So talk about gap, there's another gap in the numbers. So our work is cut out for us. Very grateful to the people, Anna, Rob, and Paul, and the others who are working on these projects. Anyone who's doing that work knows that it isn't the get-rich-quick scheme by any stretch of the imagination. But we hope that we can continue to make progress. I feel such a great deal of enthusiasm around the entire community at every level, from the new employees that are trying to come here that need a place to live, to the leadership, and everywhere in between. Everyone, it's like all hands are on deck right now for this housing need. And man, if we all can't move this forward now, we never will, because we have everybody on the bus, on the train. So let's go. So Ella and Elizabeth, in response to what you heard from these proposals for these projects, do you want to share what resources the HRA could bring to help, or any other thoughts that you have in response?
Well, thanks, Mary. Just put us on the spot, but that's what we're here for. Right.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, I just, maybe I'll just offer some general thoughts. I think Ella did a good job because what we're here to do is not to workshop an individual development proposal, but think about how are we helping to create the environment that supports the general tools and being able to use them in a more focused way. So since we've been interacting with the EDA and we've been part of some city council meetings, meetings of the county commission, the EDA, this is our first opportunity to come here in person. We've really heard very, very consistent messages, which I will say does not always happen in a community. So very consistent messages about need. Very consistent messages about desire to have more focus on housing and how to address that need. And so what we've been trying to do is listen and see, what is that highest priority that we're hearing for how to bring more focus as well as leverage those resources. So I think when Ella talked about the combination at the HRA, which is the mechanism, which is the most common mechanism in the state of Minnesota that's used at the local government level to bring focus and attention, is having the HRA. We feel like that has been a very good conversation where we've had a lot of interest at every level of the government and quasi-government officials here in exploring this as being sort of a way to bring that needed focus and be a partner to the city and the county. So I know there's already some look at utilizing other tools and updating policies. That's something else that sometimes happens. Whether you're looking at, and we kind of have a list here of local government tools. The League of Minnesota Cities is also a great partner in kind of putting those together, whether they're the local government tools of tax increment financing, property tax abatement, looking at how you bring focus through your zoning and planning. But I think the big issue is local government can't do it alone. So we also need someone, this would be another point of the HRA, to help bring direction to making applications. And often when you've got multiple great projects, like we've just heard about multiple great projects, that also is a function of having an HRA to help kind of facilitate how do we work through the fact that we have multiple great projects, and how do we help, bring some of those to fruition, because at the end of the day you want to have some finished projects. I think what is really exciting is, just hearing this example of the Habitat model is just, there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit here and a lot of kind of, we're going to get it done. And so I think also that feels like a very kind of unique quality to a lot of the residents and business owners here. So how can government kind of be a better partner? And so that's what we've been focusing on. So I'm sorry, these are kind of way up here comments, but.
No, I expected you to start writing checks. Come on, Elizabeth.
Right. I think maybe the other thing I would just say is that, so we've really been left a little bit high and dry, those of us who are working on housing, by the state not spending enough money and the federal government not spending enough money to spur some of the projects where the market doesn't do the trick. And so, and that's where government comes in, is where the market doesn't do the trick by itself. There have been, we're still kind of waiting to see what will continue to happen at the federal government level. That is very important. I know, we're still kind of trying to understand what are the opportunities through the American Rescue Plan. There are some housing opportunities, but not, still trying to understand how those help with the actual development and rehab process and preservation. So that's some of the questions. And then I will just say, we're kind of also waiting for decisions at the federal government level around an infrastructure plan, and whether that includes some significant housing resources, as well as the proposed fiscal year 22 appropriations. So there's, kind of working through those two processes. The White House has made proposals that put more attention on housing than frankly has been had in many decades. But there is a process to go through, and so we'll see what kind of comes out in the end, I think is what I would say there. Same at the state level. They have not finished their job yet this session, but they will soon, and I have faith something will see what happens in June. So those are the two other places we look to to see, are there resources that are really going to be a match to what are the projects that there is the priority on in Cook County. So,
thank you. Ella, anything more?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then we'll open it up to the rest of the folks here and welcome questions or comments that any of you would have to share. For anyone. Stacy?
Anna, I wanted to thank you for the very compelling story and the way that you are, trying to realize your vision for the community and what I see it as local housing for local people provided by a local person, organization, developer, we're getting to be. And I know you're trying to keep the costs down. And I'm curious about the shell that you ordered. Where did you get it from for the first house? And was it similar for the one for the second house? Did you order a shell and then work from there?
I did. The shells are ordered from Premier Portable Building. It's a company out of Wisconsin. They're 2x4 construction, which is sufficient if you use a spray foam. From what I understand by the contractors that I know, is the building went to 2x6 construction only to increase insulation, which was fiberglass, right? So you needed the space to do that. But with spray foam, you can have a 2x4 wall. So we do. Yeah, they're slick little buildings. The last one was $14,000 delivered. My contractor would love to be able to build those all day long, but he can't for that kind of money. And the first one was $12,000, and it had nothing to do with lumber increase. It was just that extra 4 feet. That 4 feet cost. But and oddly enough, they haven't really increased during this craziness.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not sure why, but that was one of the first things I did, was check on them, because.
maybe they have their own sawmill.
Yeah, but as we know, that doesn't necessarily.
That's not the answer.
We still haven't figured out who's making the money here, because it isn't, they might be having a good year, but it is in the mills, in the lumber stores, there's somebody in between. But anyway, so it's Premier Portable Buildings. They're great to work with. The salespersons, I've dealt with one woman only, but she's been great. It's delivered on site. They help you level, and they're there an hour and they're gone, and it's sweet.
And then you put them on a slab or footings? I can't remember.
Initially we wanted to put it on the slab. We have a floating slab, but then we found out we couldn't. We didn't find out until it was delivered almost, because they come on skids, and those skids are built into the floor. They're part of the floor system. So they have to go on block. So we block them, and then we put some more of the smart siding around them and insulate, spray foam that as well. It's a very efficient model. It's just that because they're so narrow to come down the road, the naysayers say, well, they look like a trailer. Well, whatever. They're a home,
Yeah.
and they're narrow,
Yeah.
so they probably do look like a trailer, but they're not.
Do you know, has the lead time increased?
It has.
Yeah.
It was 3 weeks from the time of ordering. It took me 2 months.
Wow.
But still, that
not
wasn't
that
bad, and I haven't checked lately because I have been working on this last house, so.
The other thing that I really like about your project is that you're thinking about energy efficiency. Because utility costs are a big part. If you are a working person, wintertime utility bills can be a killer.
Right.
And the fact that you're thinking about the energy efficiency aspect and trying to bring that cost down is hugely important for keeping folks in those homes.
Right.
So I love that.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if these structures are, what we call it, linear, longer than they are wider, which
Yeah.
is good. That provides an opportunity for southern exposure, and energy gain, that way, whether it's passive or active with solar panels that could be added in the future, that would save also on your heating costs.
Certainly, solar would. There's a little investment in solar. I checked into solar.
Passive really doesn't take much more than.
Oh, passive, I'm
Passive.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sure,
Both ways.
sure.
Passive, is basically orientation. as
You
long
bet.
as you have
With any home.
good windows.
You betcha.
Right.
But, with any home, but to start with, you have the opportunity
Yep.
to get that.
I
And
agree.
if I could you tell us your name?
Yeah, Tony Walzer.
Oh, Oh, yes, I recognize your voice, but I couldn't connect the dots. And Tony, you're with the
With C-CLAP.
C-CLAP, yeah, that's right.
Active Living Steering Committee and Safe
Yeah.
Routes to School.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Stacy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the two projects and why you want to use mixed use. Is that because of zoning, or why not just build apartments?
For the Bluefin Bay project, Joe's conversations with me have been around a couple of things. First off, there's an idea about an incubator space to allow people who are entrepreneurs to have a place to go. We proved that with the COVID and the pandemic, and then the excellent broadband up here, people don't have to go to the office. And the closet business person or the businesswoman wants to get a little bit more serious, that might be an option. He's talked about a couple of other needs, commercial wash, and just other activities. And if it gets full, set aside the risk of commercial space, because I think the risk in the residential space is lower for getting that full.
Mm-hmm.
But set aside the commercial space risk, assume they're all full. I think there's an opportunity to offset some of the costs of the residential component.
Mm-hmm.
There's also you might laugh at me, I'm going to call it a prettiness factor. I hope you can go online to the county website and see some of the images of these buildings. If you call it the Toffee look or the Toffee Scandinavian look, or they're really attractive. And that second floor height is also then a bonus of making it look very appealing and very matching to the whole Bluefin Bay concepts.
Mm-hmm. I can add a little bit to that. I won't speak for Rob, but I can just tell you what I've heard him say, that in his project, on the ground floor would be a restaurant and 3 commercial spaces, and it is his intent that he and his family will run the restaurant. It's something that they love, and they want to do it. And they know that it's really hard to make money in the restaurant business, and they want to do it anyway, so.
Always more.
I know, right? And then, the other thing that I also heard from Dennis when he first contacted me about that project was that Bluefin has its own needs for additional commercial space, that they have 4 people officing in that building in Toffee, that swooping roof, that was the old bank. There's 4 people officing in there, and crammed in amongst all of their offices is all of the furniture and fixtures for the quality control that they use to update the units. So they need some of the commercial space as well.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Same thing, I looked at both business models. Excuse me, it comes down to retail and restaurant space can carry more freight than the housing when you're targeting workforce or lower cost housing. So in a way, you're putting in commercial to subsidize the second floor, and lowers your building cost as well. So
Carry more freight in terms of lower cost and
cost of building the building.
lower cost of building, yeah.
It doesn't lower the cost of building, but it gives you more income per square foot on a business, on a retail restaurant space than
Oh, that's what I'm trying to understand. It feels like a riddle. So the rent is higher in a commercial space
You're
than
gonna
a
make more
residential.
money off of that.
That's what I
That's
want to
the
make
bottom
it
line.
perfectly clear what that message is. Okay,
Did that make sense? Okay.
all right. Ann?
I have a question, Anna. We talked about rentals and apartments. You're looking at a house. What kind of interest do you have? You have a long waiting list. How many people have contacted you about ownership of a home?
I don't have a long waiting list. Most of the people, I have a couple people on the list, and one in particular gal is probably going to take a year to get her credit to where she's even capable of getting a loan. Most of the other people that have approached me aren't capable of getting a loan. Now, if I advertised that there was a house to be available, I think that would be a little different, but I don't want that kind of pressure. I think that's a small enough town, people know if, you know, if they're in a position to buy a home, you know, to come, you know, I'd build them a home, you know, if I had the land. Anyway, I'm sorry. So, you know, I'm confident that there's enough people out there that are willing to have a little bit of piece of the pie in ownership. Again, I have no problem with the rental, but, you know, there is pride in ownership, and, you know, that's the first step to a lot of things, so.
And one thing I think, so Anna's targeting, you know, people who probably really can't even imagine that they might be able to buy a house, but with this one house at a time at the level of 100 or 110,000, you're making it available to people that wouldn't ordinarily be able to buy a house. If they bought a house for $100,000, it would cost them $1,200 a month to keep it warm in the winter, you know, so it's a very good thing. But the other thing that we're hearing, it's not only those folks at that, you know, in that market, at that level of income. We have people here in public health and human services, we have healthcare people, we have teachers, people at every level in our community that can't find places to live. So it's the broad spectrum of need that we're trying to meet. What's affordable to one person is different than another person, you know. So it's important, I think, that we keep that in mind, that, you know, it really is across the whole market of workforce. And we're also collecting data, Allie at Public Health, and I think someone at Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, I can't remember, but people have some data around homelessness, which we don't really think about that much here, but what it looks like in Cook County is people who are couch surfing from friends and family, or, you know, there might be some tents out in the woods on somebody's back 40, or we don't know, but to be able to identify that need more clearly is also helpful to our cause, because there are some programs that are specific for addressing homelessness. And, you know, it doesn't look like homelessness in Minneapolis or St. Paul here. We don't have you know, a camp of people living in the park, but we do know that there are lots of people who don't have homes. So.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to circle back to, Elizabeth, you were talking about the fact that, you know, government sometimes has to step in when the market is not providing the solution. And thinking about the use of public funding for addressing needs like this, which, by the way, I was going to mention also, we have, in addition to the infrastructure bill that you referred to, we've got the American Rescue Plan funds that are currently available that the county's receiving, and that can be used for infrastructure as well. So there's an opportunity there for us to maybe apply some of that funding to address this need, which could dovetail nicely into the work that you're doing, Anna, and potentially, you know, other folks in the community as well. But one thing that, you know, I keep circling back to is as we look for opportunities to invest public funding to address this issue, I think it's going to be very important for us to create mechanisms that ensure that the housing that we build will remain for workforce. Because, you know, if we do a project and in a couple of years somehow it becomes a vacation rental, we haven't really made any progress. And I'm not undermining or discounting the importance or the value of vacation rentals to our local economy, but the fact is we need places for people who live and work here to be able to live. So I think that's something that we're going to have to keep a real focus on as we move forward in these discussions.
And actually, on that note, I was curious, Paul, if you know if there are any plans for the rentals, either or in Rob's thing, how to make sure that they won't become vacation rentals. I know that they're intended for long-term residents, but if there's any sort of controls you're proposing.
I've not heard Joe and I haven't talked about the specific controls or anything in that covenant. But when you think about the cycle or the circle, Bluefin needs X number of workers, and you can't get the workers if they can't have a place to stay. So if the units go away that were formerly workforce housing, then the service sacrifices at the resort. So there's that positive incentive to keep it as workforce housing and affordable housing. If there's some type of grants, I've been involved in various agreements with funding agencies that, look, if there's X dollars coming your way to assist in getting this thing done, then there's the expectation that it's going to stay at a certain affordability or the workforce housing label for X number of years.
Right.
I mean, there's just ways to do it.
Yeah.
I really like the incentive model of Joe needs people. All the investors at Bluefin needs people. Rob needs people, and they need a place to stay.
Right.
I was going to say too, Mary, that just having a place to stay is one thing, but then the quality of where they're staying.
Yeah.
2 or 3 people, possibly in a bedroom, related or not. I mean, it's just we can increase that significantly,
Right.
While we're taking care of the other
Yeah.
aspects.
That's another thing that I think that's occurred at Bluefin. They have probably brought in, around the county, they've brought in the highest number of employees from Puerto Rico. And Dennis has described to us that the housing that they've built there at their workforce apartments that are up the hill, originally a 2-bedroom apartment could have housed at least 2 employees, if not 4. Well, now a 2-bedroom apartment is housing 1 employee and their spouse and their children. So what used to be beds for 4 workers is now 1 worker. So that, it's great. It brought a family to the community. It put kids in the school. It brought that 1 worker who is essential to the success of the operation, but it just, the numbers, it just keeps shifting. And I had a thought, but okay, never mind.
I was just going to ask another question about just because we're talking about, what are the opportunities to, for some segment of housing, ensure that it remains available to those who live here year-round and things like that. So that your deed restrictions were creative. I wasn't sure, what happens when those folks decide that they want to sell. And I just say that because I know there are some habitat models I thought where it reverts back to habitat has an option. So I just was curious if that's built in at all or not.
We considered that option.
I see, okay.
But I've said this to the point where it's probably people are sick of hearing it, but we're no spring chickens, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to be
So
doing
then
this.
it's like a timeline issue, yeah.
Right, Hamilton Habitat is going to last until we're done, literally. And we don't want to retain anything. We don't. What happens if they want to sell it? They get their equity. That's what happens. But as a matter of fact, these first 2 models, the first one sold for 110 at a price for 145. The second one sold for 100 at a price for 153, which makes me, it's our market for you. That's great if you're an owner of real estate. I have no problem with making money. I'm not, I was in real estate 12 years. I get how it works. It's just, I think that they're entitled to it. Now, so who's going to buy that house? That's the question. Who's going to want that house at $153,000 and you can't rent it? Well, somebody who wants to live here.
Because of the deed restrictions go to the new owner.
For 30 years, those deed restrictions
yeah.
are there. So, I hear arguments on both sides. People question me on it and quiz me on it, and I appreciate that. Who's going to want that house? I hear that a lot. Well, somebody who wants to live here.
Yeah.
Somebody
Right.
who. So, even one of the attorneys who I worked with for 25 years said, what happens if in 6 months they get a really good job in Florida and they're not sure they want to take it? And I thought, what a dumb question. What is that? Well, they move, or I didn't know how to answer that question. If they take another job, they take another job.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but you have to sell your house. I mean, that, I don't know.
It's the spirit of the agreement. It's the intent of the project. The same in our, we couldn't do it, One Roof couldn't do it at Nordic Star in the single-family homes. Because of the source of the funding, we couldn't do any discriminatory or, restricted kind of use. But the source of funds for the apartments in Lutzen came from the Greater Minnesota Workforce Housing Grant Program when it was still with deed. And it requires that those apartments are rented to workforce.
Interesting.
And so, once a year, at least one person
That's good to
in
know.
every apartment has to produce, to the rental management company, has to produce a paycheck stub, to prove that at least one person in every apartment is an employee. So, other family members don't necessarily have to be working or, whatever. But, and that's in the lease that everybody signs before they get their keys to move into the apartment, that they will be able to produce a paycheck
That's
stub.
good to know. I've never known that. So who owns that apartment building?
One Roof owns them,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have more time planned for this if there's more questions. Otherwise, we can take a break. Oh, Stacy, come on. Yeah, for sure.
I'm just curious, zoning was mentioned a few different times by all of you, I think. And I'm just wondering if you want to speak to any specific issues that you say, this really needs to change. Do you know of any?
So, I mean, that's not really for us, and we weren't asked to come in and look at zoning, but just kind of on the list of what communities do, that often is a big issue, like, is this zone for commercial or residential? Again, it goes to what's the community's goals and how you want that to be reflected through some of your zoning. Other things, that are often looked at in terms of zoning are, lot size, all sorts of minimums and maximums, all sorts of things that kind of go to what does that lot allow you to build? And then that goes to sometimes the cost of building. So, there's a whole variety of things that can be looked at sometimes, and so I mentioned it more in that general category. So I'm not sure, I guess Mike would be the one to say if the city's, doing any look at zoning or not, and, things like that, but.
So is Nancy, because she's on the
Yeah,
planning.
Okay,
I'm on.
that's why I said, so, and
But
I don't
I'm
know all this,
wondering,
right?
So the HRA,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, does that group, if that's what we decide to do, is there an aspect of zoning in there that they look at to say, hey, city, county, maybe we need to make some changes?
So that is a role that belongs to government,
Okay.
to actually do that job. So HRAs don't traditionally, they would not, they wouldn't have the authority to do that. I could see some interaction if the city wanted some feedback, things like that. But again, that's not a role of an HRA to make those decisions.
That's that feedback part where I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all are.
How's that
same
dovetail?
six people talking to each other all the time, and, whatever board it happens to be that is there, there's a lot of crossover that these groups have, and that's to our benefit, I think, that if we all have shared goals and we're all talking about the same issues, then each of us goes back to our role and figures out how our role can contribute to it, and sometimes there might be opportunities for suggestions too. And I think we've already seen that, when Anna's come and talked to us about rezoning a property and that opportunity didn't work out. The result of that for us is we need to have a greater community-wide conversation about where is this commercial zoning appropriate and where are we more willing to have it be residential zoning. And that's what's going to happen next. So.
And I would add to that it is happening, at the state level, it's happening with regard to Cedar Grove Business Park, which again was funded by a grant that allows for industrial, warehouse, and manufacturing. And when I contacted the state grant manager and asked him what we needed to do to allow Cedar Grove Business Park to be more, the use of those lots to be more flexible and to allow people to have live and work opportunities throughout the business park, he told me that the only way that could happen is if we changed the state law. And so we are changing the state law. And it's good for everyone in the state who's received those grant funds that has a business park funded through that program, because it will, with the law, the new language is going to say for any lands 10 years after the grant award, any lands undeveloped, I think that's the word, undeveloped or unsold, I can't remember, the restrictions go away. So then it enables the city to consider ordinance changes to the zoning, or zoning changes for that business park. And we haven't begun to have that conversation yet, but there's a place where the EDA, we don't have the authority to change the zoning, but we do have the authority to make suggestions and recommendations and do the work behind the scenes to get things done. So it's a different kind of a role. It's not a decision-making, absolutely, you know, but we certainly do have a place. And I believe the HRA would be similar in nature. If the HRA board and staff found a piece of property somewhere in the county and said, this is where we could build X, then, you know, that group of people then goes to the commissioners and whoever, the process that you go through, and see if you can make something happen. But, yeah.
Mary, I just wanted to follow up. Where is that legislation now? Because I know that it was passing.
Yep.
And I thought it had pretty much gone.
Well, it's in the jobs bill that has been gone through the conference committees.
Yep.
And there's general agreement in both the House and the Senate about everything in the jobs bill, but there's a lot going on in the legislature. And we hope that all of the bargaining that takes place in the 11th hour and apparently now behind closed doors, we just got an update from our legislative representative that they're just wrestling with some really big things and they can't come to terms with them, and the special session is expected on June 14th. And then, we're optimistic that it will be approved at the legislature, and then will the governor sign it, and there's another layer of, so, it's never over till it's over. We've learned that many times. But feeling good.
Okay, I have a question for you. One roof housing, the homes that went up in the western part of town, was water and sewer there already?
In the street.
In the street?
They installed water and sewer in the road that they built.
In the road that goes
Yeah.
up the hill.
But it was down the street.
Only
But
the
it was-
houses that are adjacent to Second Street could have been served by existing utilities. All the ones that are up the road, they had installed utilities.
But it made that development pretty expensive.
Well, yeah.
Because of all the infrastructure put in.
You bet. I was just
There's
thinking,
utilities in that road now.
Yeah.
There's a big chunk, piece of property at the end that's not have anything built on it right now.
right,
On a
I've,
roof that probably won't be coming back to build any more stuff.
That's not true.
Maybe
They might.
I know there's land in the western part of this
Developer.
city that all it needs is water and sewer. And I don't mean that's all it needs, like, that's all it needs, somebody to dig a trench.
Right.
No, I understand that it's expensive. But I think that should be part of your equation when you're talking about what you can do as a city, is open up some land that somebody can do something with.
Well, I think, Anna, that's what we were saying, last time we were all chatting, on planning and zoning, was, yeah, we want to go after that.
Yeah.
See what we can do, see what
Yeah.
we can find. Same with, finding more R1 where it makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's funding available for that kind of infrastructure from IRRB and Minnesota DEED and PFA, Public Facility, yeah.
Of course, we like to use our money to replace existing stuff too.
Well, right, yes, we have a lot, but then James, with the American Rescue, that might be money that's eligible to help build, that's, and we're all learning still, as Elizabeth said, the guidance is still trickling down, so, the conversations are happening, but,
Stacy, for the Toffee Downtown Mixed Use Project, the approved portion of that already is the retail. And once our details about the housing aspects of it are approved and submitted, we're optimistic, and the conversations so far have been very good about, yeah, that seems to make sense. But that'll be the part that we're asking for approval on the P&Z.
and that's coming, like, soon to the county's meeting. It's on the agenda for next week, or the next meeting, or?
That's not going to be the formal application. That'll be additional conversation.
Oh, an introduction is happening?
A little bit further, a
Okay.
little bit more detail.
Okay.
Update on the process, update on the numbers, update on the issues.
So that conversation is happening with the county, whatever is that committee called?
The committee of the whole?
No,
A good guess.
I
the
call it the planning and
planning,
zoning.
planning and zoning,
Oh, yeah.
right,
Yeah,
okay.
yes, ma'am.
You can't know everything.
Tony?
Yes, prior to that, what, housing workforce group, I think that's what you call it, the meeting that was last week that was canceled because it's double booked, I think. But anyways, in lieu of attending this meeting, there was some information that was sent out. There was a brief analysis of the housing situation in the county. And what was mentioned was to take a look at a lot of various different types of housing, not just focusing on single-family housing, like tiny houses, not only 100 square feet, maybe something like Anna's doing, 400 to 600 square feet. Common interest communities, you have smaller lots, private lots, and more public space, common space within the development, or eco-village, something like that, co-housing, where there's duplexes, so you have a common wall and you're sharing on some of the costs, maybe like, where one roof housing is, not to be critical of it, but an iteration may be, higher density, smaller lots, more open space, and you can possibly save on some construction costs. And then, orientation, solar orientation, to be able to have passive gains. And I understand now, too, that a couple people that purchased houses there are actually thinking about having solar panel, PV panels installed. So I guess I'd say there's no one answer to the housing situation, and it has to be a multitude of things, and there may not be, the ordinances to handle those, now, but let's not let that be a deterrent to what could possibly be done. Let's come up with a possible solution and then see how it can be adjusted, local ordinances or, regulations changed to be able to fit that, within reason, of course.
Yeah, the work is large. That's why many hands are needed.
Of course, we've talked to Anna about, wouldn't it be great if you just built really small apartment buildings or a million other ideas, and she's got a vision, right? She has a thing that she wants to do and that she's figured out how to do, and that's part of the give and take is when somebody's here and they've got their thing, that you're not going to convince them that what you want is something else. That's, you're going to take what they're offering and be thankful for it. And I've had that same thought, boy, we could really, this infrastructure cost is such a barrier. It would be so much easier if we just did the common interest community model and try to put a lot of things close together. Or we build multifamily so we don't have to extend sewer and water. That's not, I don't have anybody who wants to build that. So Okay, great. My idea is now back on the shelf, right, where it belongs.
I think
It's not
that's
my
a-
idea, obviously, but it's, you know, that idea is looking for a home, and I think the HRA could potentially be the place where those ideas live and are shopped around and marketed and looked for partners, and in a way that, you know, I do that same function, but I also have 40 other jobs, and I don't have the focus
Yeah.
to do that. Whereas if we tell this group of people, we want you to do this full-time, and this staff, this is your job full-time,
Yeah.
I think we get a little further.
Exactly.
And it's not this or that, I mean, great, Anna's got a vision and plan, let's go, you know, that doesn't mean somebody else can't go do their plan, I mean, we got room for all of it, so.
For sure.
It's not knock kids out of Anna for what she's doing to come up with another idea, let's go there and go another place too.
And it's always gonna be at a scale that's pretty small in the world, right? When we're up here in Cook County.
Right.
And that, but I think that strategy works for us, and sometimes then it feels like we're not making any progress until we stop and get a few people together and realize, wow, there's really a lot of cool projects going on. And 4 or 5 units at a time, we can chip in.
Yeah, well, look at the transformation in Gopher, on whatever level you saw Gopher. I mean, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
Wonderful thing. That was something I'd had my eyes on once too, was Gopher, you know. Never would have dreamt of the old motel being moved, and I just think that
Right.
what he did was great, with whomever's help.
So-
And I did build a duplex once, if you recall. It was my home, and duplexes are not cheap. And so it's not that I don't have, yeah, and you're right, everybody has their own vision, and it's all good. But Anna's vision is simple and not expensive. I mean, I'm not a developer, I'm only doing what I know how to do. And it's just gotta be enough for a few people.
It's terrific.
Right, it's great. So Gopher, what she referred to there is, used to be a little cabin resort on the east end of town. It had been really
Rundown.
suffering of deferred maintenance. Rundown is correct.
I could never be a politician.
And this family purchased it, Bruce and Steve and other brothers, and they cleaned up the cabins, they cleaned up the existing property. They removed, we got a IRRB grant for demolition of 15 mobile homes that were 30 years old and not really habitable.
But we're housing.
But people were living in them. And there was a motel that closed, and they picked up the buildings. There's 3 sections with 4 motel units in each one, so 12 total. Picked them up and moved them from the west end of town to the east end of town, and converted them into 12 studio apartments with little kitchenettes, you know, and a bedroom and a table with a couple of chairs, and popped some skylights in the roofs. And I've been in them. There, if I was
Yep.
starting
I could've
out,
lived in one of those,
we
you
would
betcha.
not. We would have had a good time there. I think, right?
A shared porch?
Yeah, and a big long porch in front, and yeah, just so that's another potential project
Fills a need.
where that fills a need. So there's 20 units of housing there that weren't before, but where the mobile homes were removed up in the back, up the hill. You know, Bruce had plans for a while to do a really cool development of these real fun, modern structures, and then realized that investment was beyond their capacity. So the next thing they're thinking about again is putting in the slabs and upgrading the water and sewer hookups and letting people buy their own mobile homes and then rent the lots like a mobile home park. So that's another project that, you know, but for the capital to get it, the seed money to get it started, you know, it's kind of stalled out right now, but there's potential there for 15 family homes to go back in that space.
It's pretty much water and sewer that needs, that's the money right there.
It's in
isn't
there,
it?
yep, and the cement, the slabs.
Yeah.
So, and we did get a grant to help them put in a new water main, to come up from the city, but I'm not sure about the infrastructure what level of repair or replacement that needs, but.
Good.
Yeah, that's another. So, there's things all over that are almost a housing project, right? They're coming though. People are determined and they're sticking with it and working through the process that not pretty every day, but you got to do it, and at the end, the community gets the housing and the workers and kids in schools and tax money.
I have to go paint. Can I leave?
You have to go paint your house. You have permission.
Thank you.
Anna, thank you so much.
Thank you, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna.
My sister's, this is gonna kill her that I sat back here.
Did someone, wait, a picture.
Don't. Very nice to meet you, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, good luck.
It's a historic moment in Cook County history. All right. Well, if there are more questions, otherwise we can take a break and then we'll just come around and regroup over there. Some of us are going to continue to have some more conversation about things. Everyone's welcome to stay, whoever is available. But we're going to shut off it won't be a public meeting any longer. It'll just be a work session for the team. But you're all welcome to be on the team. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Do we need to go tell April? Or
Yeah, I'll go.
You got that? Okay.
Oh, cheers.
Oh, great.
Just
And
easier than-
there's all kinds of snacks that were brought in
All right.
for you. There's donuts, well, and there's apples and carrots and popcorn and.
Can I ask a question, just because maybe I'm just not reading this right? So,